6 trends I think are really important when you're thinking about the environmental sustainability of supply chains. Number 1, hyper-transparency. In other words, when it comes to supply chain impacts, there's nowhere to hide. So it's really important you understand what's happening in your supply chain and understand that you're not going to be able to do that on your own, that you'll need to collaborate with your competitors, oftentimes your arch competitors, to understand what's really happening in the supply chain. Because in this digitalized world that we live in, something that's happening down in tier 7, forced labour, bonded labour, could be headlines within a matter of seconds. Equally, it's not just a risk, it's an opportunity. So how might you use the fact that we can find out what's happening in supply chains to tell a different story about your product, to co-create solutions with your suppliers, and to bring the product story to the consumer to drive demand for sustainable products? So that's trend number 1. Number 2 is new market mechanisms. So we often hear when we talk about supply chains the fact that value is stuck, perhaps with the retailers, perhaps with the processors, depending on what sector you're in. And actually value doesn't tend to make it down to where it's probably most needed, which is at primary production, particularly true for agriculture. So one of the trends that we're seeing is experimentation with different market mechanisms which can deliver value all the way through the supply chain, and particularly to the primary producer. We have a project running at Forum called Tea 2030, looking at the sustainability of the global tea value chain, and within that we're trialing a different market mechanism designed to deliver value back to the smallholders and sustain their livelihoods in a much more sustainable fashion. Number 3 is getting ready for a closed loop supply chain. There is no waste, and actually your waste could be someone else's raw material input. And supply chains, no matter what sector, no matter where in the world, are very wasteful at the moment. So how might we harvest that waste? How might we create closed loop supply chains? And how might your waste be someone else's raw material input? Massive economic benefits, massive societal, massive environmental benefits. So that's trend number 3. Number 4, the sharing economy. So in the Western world in particular, there are goods being transacted for no financial value. We have peer-to-peer lending sites. We're sharing our goods and services. We are offering someone food in exchange for perhaps their help with our DIY. So in this sharing economy, the traditional structure of supply chains where you have financial transactions moving from one step to another just completely fall down. And so what are the other sources of value in your supply chain? How do you harness environmental value in your supply chain? How do you harness societal value? If your supply chain is totally predicated on financial transactions, then the sharing economy is going to be very, very disruptive. So think through, how do you start to transform your supply chain so it's fit for purpose for the sharing economy? Number 5 is very linked, new business models. As part of the desire to dematerialize and to reduce environmental impacts, to reduce waste coming out of goods and services, we're moving in many sectors from products to services. So today you can lease a pair of jeans, you can lease a car, you can lease a mobile phone handset. In these situations, we don't own the goods that we've actually paid the exchange in finances for. It's a lease model. That lease model is a very different business model and makes a very different supply chain. So for the lease of jeans example, this is Mud Jeans run out of the Netherlands. They need a supply chain that can take the jeans back and actually bring them back into the system. So how fit for purpose is your supply chain if you think about a product to service shift? Very important question to think about. Then number 6, finally, but really importantly, the big trend we're seeing at Forum, and that's partly because we're driving it, is the need to be net positive. It isn't enough for businesses just to do less harm. So in terms of your supply chain, just reducing water use by X%, waste reduction by Y%, carbon by Z% isn't enough. We live in a world where nature's assets are depleting rapidly, where societal assets are depleting. So we need to move from doing less harm to actually putting more back in than we take out. So how might your supply chain be net positive? How might you actually create a net positive impact for the environment? Again, that's a very different type of supply chain.